I don't even know where to start. Last night, my entire world crumbled in a matter of minutes. My name is Michael, and until yesterday, I thought I had a perfectly normal life. My wife, Amy, and I had been married for 9 years. No major fights, no red flags, just the usual ups and downs that come with marriage. Or so I thought. But then came last night. It was a regular Thursday evening. I decided to stop by a bar after work, a little spot Amy and I used to frequent. It was our go-to place, cozy, with dim lighting, wooden tables, and an old jukebox that only worked half the time. This bar held so many memories for us. Our first dates, long conversations about life and dreams, and countless laughs. It felt like a piece of our history, but last night, it became the place where everything fell apart. As I walked in, I immediately noticed something was off. Sitting in the corner, at our usual table no less, was Amy. At first, I felt a flicker of happiness seeing her there, until I noticed she wasn't alone. Opposite her sat a man I didn't recognize, tall, polished, with an easy confidence that irritated me on sight. Amy was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. It wasn't just a casual laugh. It was the kind of laugh she hadn't shared with me in years, the kind that made her throw her head back and light up the room. I froze mid-step. For a moment, I thought I must have been mistaken. Maybe this was some work meeting, or she was catching up with an old friend. But the way she leaned toward him, the way his hand brushed hers, it was clear as day. My heart started racing. A part of me wanted to turn around and leave, to pretend I hadn't seen anything, to avoid shattering the illusion of the life I thought we had. But another part of me couldn't let it go. My feet moved on their own, carrying me toward their table, every step heavier than the last. Amy didn't notice me at first. She was too focused on him, her eyes sparkling in a way I hadn't seen in years. When I finally reached the table, she looked up, and the color drained from her face. "Michael," she stammered, her voice trembling. The man didn't even flinch. He leaned back in his chair, giving me the kind of smirk that made my blood boil. "You must be Michael," he said casually, like he was introducing himself at a networking event. I ignored him, keeping my eyes locked on Amy. "Care to explain?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm, though inside I was anything but. Amy opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, her hands fumbling with the edge of the table. "It's not what it looks like," she finally managed to say. I let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, really? So you're going to tell me you just happened to end up here, at our table, with him?" I jabbed a finger in the man's direction, who still looked annoyingly smug. "Look, man," the guy chimed in, leaning forward slightly. "I don't think this is the place for shut your mouth." I snapped, cutting him off. "You don't get to talk." Turning back to Amy, I took a deep breath, my chest tightening with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "How long, Amy? How long has this been going on?" She didn't answer. Her silence spoke louder than any words could have. I reached for my wedding ring. Slowly, deliberately, I slid it off my finger. It felt heavier than ever in my hand, as if it carried the weight of every promise she'd just broken. I clenched it in my fist for a moment before tossing it onto the table. It landed with a sharp metallic clang that seemed to echo through the bar. "You made your choice," I said, my voice low but firm. "Enjoy it." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out. The air outside was cool, but I didn't feel it. My mind was racing, replaying what had just happened over and over. How had I not seen the signs? Was I blind, or was she just that good at hiding it? I sat in my car for what felt like hours, staring blankly at the steering wheel. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I didn't check it. I knew it was her. What could she possibly say to fix this? Eventually, I drove off, not knowing where I was going or what I was going to do next. All I knew was that the life I thought I had was gone, and there was no going back. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I drove aimlessly around the city, the echo of Amy's laugh and that smug look on the stranger's face playing on an endless loop in my head. Every corner of my mind was filled with questions, each one gnawing at me like a dog on a bone. When the first light of dawn broke through the windshield, I found myself parked in front of a motel. It was a rundown place, the kind where you'd expect to find broken dreams and one-night stands. I checked in without even thinking. The clerk gave me a look, probably wondering what a guy in crumpled work clothes was doing there so early in the morning, but I didn't care. I needed somewhere to think, or maybe just to fall apart. As I sat on the edge of the stiff motel bed, staring at the beige walls, the memories started flooding back. Amy and I had met at a mutual friend's wedding. She was the maid of honor, and I was just a guy who'd come to the reception for the free drinks. But the moment I saw her, everything else faded away. She was radiant, confident, and funny in a way that didn't feel forced. I thought I'd won the lottery when she said yes to our first date. Fast forward 9 years, and I was sitting in a dingy motel room, trying to process how the woman who once promised me forever had just shattered it in a single evening. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was Amy. She'd been calling and texting all night, but I hadn't bothered to read any of it. I picked up the phone and, for the first time, opened one of her messages. Michael, please let me explain. It's not what you think. Not what I think. That line again. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to type something back, but what was the point? I tossed the phone onto the bed and buried my face in my hands. The next morning, I woke up in the cramped motel room, my back sore from the stiff mattress. My thoughts were just as jumbled as the night before, but something had shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was angry. I deserved answers. No, I needed them. After a quick shower and a weak cup of coffee from the motel's machine, I drove back to the house. I wasn't sure what I'd find when I got there, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Amy dodge this conversation anymore. When I walked through the door, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your skin crawl. I called out her name, but got no response. The living room was empty, the kitchen spotless. For a second, I thought she'd left, but then I saw her car parked in the driveway. That's when I heard the faint sound of footsteps upstairs. I climbed the stairs slowly, every creak of the wooden steps echoing in my ears. The door to our bedroom was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open to find her sitting on the bed, staring at her phone. She looked up as I entered, her face pale and drawn. Michael, she said softly, standing up. You came back. I ignored her attempt to sound relieved. We need to talk, I said, my voice firm. And this time, you're not going to dodge the truth. She nodded, biting her lip. I know. I owe you an explanation. No, Amy, you owe me the truth. I leaned against the dresser, crossing my arms. Start from the beginning. How long has this been going on? She hesitated, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. It started a few months ago, she said finally. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean for it to get this far. Didn't mean for it to get this far? I repeated, my voice rising. Amy, you don't just accidentally end up in a relationship with someone else. This wasn't some mistake. You made a choice. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her play the victim, not this time. Who is he? I demanded. What's his deal? Is he married? Does he know you're married? She hesitated again, and that hesitation was all the answer I needed. He's not married, she admitted. His name is Eric. We met at work. Of course, I muttered, shaking my head. The classic coworker affair. How original. It wasn't like that, she insisted, stepping closer. We started as friends, and then, I don't know. I wasn't happy, Michael. I felt like we lost something. And you thought sleeping with someone else was the solution? I shot back. You didn't think maybe we could talk about it first? Her face crumpled, and she sank back onto the bed. I was stupid. I know I was stupid, but it wasn't just about that. He made me feel seen. Seen? I laughed bitterly. So what am I, a ghost? Have the last 9 years meant nothing to you? Her silence was deafening. I turned away, running my hands through my hair. I felt like I was going to explode. You know what hurts the most? I said, my voice shaking. The fact that you didn't even try to fix things with me. You didn't give us a chance. You just went behind my back. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Well, congratulations, Amy. Mission failed. For a moment, neither of us said anything. The air between us was thick with tension, years of love and betrayal colliding in a storm that neither of us could control. Finally, I spoke again. Do you love him? She looked up at me, her eyes wide with fear. What? It's a simple question, I said coldly. Do you love him? She opened her mouth to answer, but then closed it again. That hesitation was like a dagger to the chest. I see, I said, my voice hollow. That's all I needed to know. Michael. Wait, she started, but I was already walking out of the room. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house any longer. As I walked down the stairs, I glanced at the photos on the wall. Our wedding day, vacations, birthdays. Each one felt like a cruel reminder of the life we used to have, a life that was now nothing more than a lie. When I reached the front door, I turned back and looked up the stairs. Amy was standing at the top, her face streaked with tears. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of something, maybe sadness, maybe regret. But then I remembered Eric, and that pain disappeared. "I'll be back for my stuff," I said, my voice cold and distant. "Don't call me. Don't text me. We're done." And with that, I walked out, leaving behind not just the house, but the life I thought I knew. I spent the next few days in a fog, staying at the same rundown motel and avoiding everyone. I didn't go to work, didn't check my emails, and didn't answer the phone. Amy kept calling, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful apologies to desperate pleas for a chance to talk. I deleted them all without listening. But one night, as I sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring at the flickering TV, I couldn't help but wonder, how did I miss the signs? How long had she been slipping away from me, piece by piece, while I was too blind or too trusting to see it? I opened my laptop, something I'd been avoiding since this all started, and logged into our shared cloud storage. It wasn't something I used often, but Amy had always been the one to save photos, receipts, and even text backups there. Part of me hoped I wouldn't find anything. A larger part of me needed to know the full extent of her betrayal. The first thing I found was a folder named Work Trips. It seemed innocent enough, just pictures of hotel lobbies, generic conference rooms, and group photos with her coworkers. But as I scrolled, one photo caught my eye. It was Amy and Eric, sitting at a small outdoor cafe. Her smile was radiant, her hand casually resting on his. It wasn't posed or formal, it was intimate. My heart sank. She hadn't even tried to hide it. Digging further, I found more text message screenshots she must have saved for some reason. Maybe she thought she'd need them for work, but they weren't about work. They were messages between her and Eric. "Eric, can't wait to see you tonight," counting down the minutes. "Amy, me too. Last night was incredible. I can still feel your touch." My stomach turned. These weren't just random flings or meaningless texts. This was an affair, deliberate and calculated, and it had been going on for months, just like she said. One message in particular made my blood run cold. "Eric, when are you going to tell him? He deserves to know." "Amy, I will. Just not yet. It's complicated." Complicated. The same word she had used with me. The same excuse she had clung to while ripping our life apart. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands trembling with a mix of anger and despair. Every time I thought I had hit rock bottom, there seemed to be another level of betrayal waiting to greet me. This wasn't just about her cheating. It was about her lying, her planning, her total disregard for the life we'd built together. That night, as I lay awake in the darkness, I realized something. I couldn't just sit in this motel room and let her get away with it. I had to confront her again, not for closure, but for myself. She needed to see the pain she caused, and I needed to show her that I wasn't the weak, oblivious husband she clearly thought I was. By morning, I had made up my mind. It was time to face her. And Eric. The drive away from the house was silent. No music, no distractions, just the sound of the tires on the road and my thoughts racing faster than the car. I knew this wasn't over. As much as I wanted to be done with Amy and her lies, there was still one loose end that I couldn't ignore: Eric. He wasn't just some random fling. He was part of this mess, and I needed to see the face of the man who had willingly inserted himself into my marriage. I needed to confront him. Amy had mentioned he worked with her, so it didn't take long to find him. A quick search online revealed the company directory, complete with his smug face staring back at me. Eric Hollis, marketing director. It figured. He looked like the kind of guy who oozed charm, the kind who could talk his way into, or out of, anything. I wrote down his office address and headed straight there. The building was sleek and modern, all glass and steel, a stark contrast to how I felt inside. I parked my car, took a deep breath, and walked in. The receptionist barely glanced at me as I strode past her desk, heading toward the elevators. I didn't have a plan, but I didn't need one. My anger was driving me now. When I reached his office, the door was slightly ajar. I knocked once, not waiting for a response, before pushing it open. Eric was sitting at his desk, leaning back in his chair with a self-assured grin that evaporated the moment he saw me. "Michael, right?" he said, his voice smooth but cautious. "I thought we might meet eventually." I closed the door behind me, and stepped into the room, my eyes locked on his. "You've got some nerve," I said, my voice low but steady. "Sitting here like nothing's happened, like you haven't been tearing my life apart." He sighed, leaning forward and clasping his hands on the desk. "Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm sorry for what happened. I never meant to cause you pain." I laughed bitterly. "Spare me the apologies, Eric. You didn't just happen to fall into my wife's life. You made a choice, just like she did. So don't stand there and pretend you're innocent." He nodded slowly, as if considering his next words carefully. "You're right, I did make a choice. But if we're being honest, your marriage was already falling apart before I came into the picture." That struck a nerve. "You don't know anything about my marriage." I shot back. "You only know the version of it she fed you while she was sneaking around behind my back." "She was unhappy, Michael," he said, his tone annoyingly calm. "You can blame me all you want, but you should also take a look in the mirror. Relationships don't fall apart overnight." I took a step closer, gripping the edge of his desk. "Don't you dare try to lecture me about my marriage. You don't get to justify what you did." He raised his hands in a mock gesture of surrender. "Fine, I won't argue with you. But I care about Amy, and I want what's best for her." "What's best for her?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You think you were what's best for her? A guy who had no problem destroying someone else's life to get what he wanted." His silence was answer enough. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at him, trying to figure out how someone could be so self-righteous while being so utterly wrong. Then I straightened up, shaking my head. "You can have her, Eric," I said, my voice steady but cold. "But don't fool yourself into thinking you've won. You've inherited a mess, and one day you'll realize that. Good luck with that." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out of his office. The tension in my chest didn't ease as I left the building, but I felt a small spark of satisfaction, knowing I'd said my piece. Eric might have Amy now, but he'd never have the life we'd built together. That was gone, and so was I. As I drove away, I thought about what came next. I didn't have all the answers, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let them take anything more from me. This was my turning point, the start of something new. The confrontation with Eric didn't bring the closure I thought it would. Sure, I had stood my ground and told him exactly what I thought of him, but the bitterness lingered. It was as if every word exchanged in his office only cemented how broken everything had become. I realized then that closure wasn't something I'd get from Amy or Eric. It was something I'd have to find for myself. I spent the next day gathering my things from the house. Amy had texted me the night before, saying she'd stay at a friend's place to give me space. I was grateful for that small mercy. Walking into the house without seeing her made it easier to focus on the task at hand. As I packed my clothes, books, and other belongings, I came across little reminders of the life we'd shared. Photos from our vacations, gifts we'd given each other over the years, notes she'd left for me on the fridge. Each one felt like a fresh wound, a reminder of what I thought we had. I took a deep breath and started boxing it all up. I wasn't going to let those things haunt me. I didn't know where I was going to keep them. Maybe a storage unit, maybe the attic, but I knew I couldn't carry them into the next chapter of my life. By the time I finished, it was late afternoon. The house was eerily quiet, stripped of the warmth it once had. I stood in the living room, looking around one last time. It felt like I was saying goodbye to more than just the house. I was saying goodbye to the man I'd been, the man who had believed in forever. Before I left, I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote Amy a letter. It wasn't for her, really. It was for me. I needed to get everything off my chest without the interruptions, excuses, or tears. "Amy, I don't know if you'll ever understand the depth of what you've done. You didn't just betray me. You shattered the trust, the love, and the life we spent years building together. I can't pretend to understand your choices, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. You said you felt invisible. You said Eric made you feel seen. Maybe that's true. But what you don't seem to realize is that you've made me feel like I was nothing. You didn't give me a chance to fix things, to be the husband you claimed you needed. Instead, you turned to someone else, and that's a choice you'll have to live with. I won't lie, this hurts more than I can put into words. But I'm not writing this to dwell on the pain. I'm writing this to tell you that I'm moving on. I'm choosing to let go of the anger and bitterness, not for your sake, but for mine. I refuse to let this define who I am or what my life becomes. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, and I hope someday you look back and realize what you threw away. Goodbye, Michael.